So, in order to validate this work and make it seem more real to people, I met with Dr. Elmer Green, who's considered to be the founder of biofeedback. And he got so excited, he wanted me to meet Dr. Norman Shealy, who was the founding president of the American Holistic Medical Association. So after some faxes and phone calls, I was invited to go to Dr. Norman Shealy's home in Springfield, Missouri, and to work at his clinic. And I went to the clinic, and Norm Shealy said, you know, I got to be honest with you, I've seen a lot of people making big claims, so I'm going to make the test so rigorous, so completely challenging, that I have no choice but to believe the outcome. He said, I don't always have to do double blinds, but I just have to make it so challenging that I have no choice but believing that outcome that happens. Well, at first he wasn't that challenging with me. He brought me the staff, his secretary, his accountant, and his nurses. And they had the typical complaints you see, the neck pain, the back pain, the shoulder pain. And I worked on them one at a time, and in a few minutes each one's pain disappeared, which is pretty typical. You often see that. Then he said, well, I need to give you somebody more challenging. So we walked into a room where there was an 88-year-old woman who was on a walker, and she kind of walked very slowly like this with her walker. And there were 4 physicians in the room, and they took her history for about a half an hour. And I was wondering, I'm not usually there for all that history. I finally said, well, can I show you what it is that I do? And they said, sure. So I had her stand up. I put my hands on her hips, and their hips were so uneven, it was really frightening. And in about 3 or 4 minutes later, the hips had aligned themselves front and back, and I worked on her neck a little bit. And it was like 5 or 6 minutes altogether. And I said, how do you feel now? And she said, oh, I can walk without the walker. And she said, as she was sprinting across the floor about like this. And she was feeling very comfortable. One of the physicians, I said, come over, measure her hips. And this young woman came over, just totally astounded. So I said, Norm, are you impressed? On the way back to his guest house where I stayed? He said, no. He said, I think some of those people might have liked you a little bit. I think some of them might have even been a little open to what you were doing. You know, that's his reputation. He's known to be the skeptic and really tough. He said, tomorrow I have people lined up for you all day. These are my most difficult chronic pain patients. These are people who've had 20, 30 years of constant chronic pain who have never been helped by any traditional or alternative therapy. I'm thinking, uh-oh, I really got my work cut out for me now. So the next morning, before these people arrived, I gave his staff an instant class, a really fast version of how to run energy, because I figured we better do some group sessions on these folks. So we gave every one of them, for a couple days, group quantum touch sessions. And the result was, from a single session, everyone experienced between a 30 and 70% reduction of pain. And that got Norm Shealy pretty excited. But he was much more excited when he called me up 10 days later to say, oh my God, it's amazing. The pain relief is lasting in every one of the people that you worked on. But that's not what impressed him the most. He had a favorite experiment. And this experiment was to get people on a table who didn't know they were going to be getting a healing session. They were wired up with electroencephalograph, that means brainwave activity, and they were being measured in terms of the brainwave. The first half an hour of the session was the control, just to see what their brainwaves looked like. And the second half an hour was where I get the tap on the shoulder and start running the energy. And it should be pretty much stable throughout. The first person that I worked on, right after I got the tap, in the first 5-minute section, his central brain delta, that's the slowest brain activity, went up in amplitude. It tripled in amplitude. In the next 25 minutes, all his brainwave activity got so quiet that Norm said that had he just looked at that one 5-minute section, he might have thought the man was brain dead. His brainwave activity got so quiet. Then they kept measuring for another 5 minutes after I was done, and the brainwave activity just kind of started floating upward because I wasn't running energy anymore. When he got off the table, the man said, wow, this is really remarkable. My back doesn't hurt anymore. He did not know he was coming in for a healing session. The next person we did was a young woman who had had her wisdom teeth out on one side and her cheek puffed out like a chipmunk on that side. And she still had a lot of pain. Well, she did not know she was coming in for a healing session, and her mother didn't know either. So she's in the room. I'm about 15 feet away. I get the tap on the shoulder after a half an hour, and I start running energy in distant healing mode, which is what I did for the other gentleman. And by the end of the session, she got up. Her brainwaves shifted a great deal. She walked out of the room, and her mother looked at her and said, "Oh my God, I can see the dimple in your cheek," because the inflammation in her cheek had gone down that much that she could actually see the dimple in her cheek. And when Norm asked her about the pain and her ability to move the jaw, he discovered that she had 70% less pain and 70% greater mobility from that little distant healing session. Norm was getting very excited, so he started calling me names. He said, "Richard, you're a world-class healer." I said, "Oh, Norm, this is a basic human skill. Everybody can do it." He said, "No, I've worked with Olga Worrell and Esteban, all these very famous people from all over the world." He said, "You're a world-class healer." I said, "No, no, no. This is something ordinary people can do. Everybody can do it. I have no extraordinary gifts." He said, "Well, you either have the healthiest ego of any healer that I've ever met or the best act." So I couldn't convince him otherwise until about 2 weeks after I got back home, and I got another call from him. And he said, "Richard, this is amazing. Every one of my staff members that you trained are able to affect the brainwaves at a distance." I said, "Norm, what an extraordinary coincidence. All your staff happen to be world-class healers." He said, "Okay, don't rub it in." But this truly is a basic human skill, that when people discover that their love really does have impact, that their love really matters, it changes everything. When you consider, who would not want to know this? Every parent, when they find out that this is valuable, that they can do this, because they can work on their family members, they can work on their friends, can pick this up. Every child can do this. Every grandparent can do this. This should become part of public education into the future. It's something that's so easy and extraordinary. It's so easy for people to pick this up and to learn it that I would actually say during my lectures when I was teaching and on the road a lot, I would say, I will guarantee you, money back, that before lunch break on the first day of a workshop, you're going to be able to see the bones move back to alignment, or you get all your money back. And now we get a lot of people saying, okay, if he's willing to commit to that level, I'm willing to step forward and do this. But what I'm letting you know is you really can do this. This really is something that is truly a basic human skill that you can pick up and make a huge difference for those around you. And in my life, I don't really have a private practice now. I'm more interested in getting the whole world recognizing and interested in learning this than just my own private practice. But I do sessions for the people that I meet, the people that are around me, the people in pain, and they don't often take very long. I'm just working on them here and there and getting results.